Part two of an exclusive CBS News investigation. We're taking a look into why doctors are often not disciplined for causing their patients harm. State medical boards, which are responsible for licensing and disciplining the doctors, have just one goal above all else: to keep the patients safe. But our year-long investigation revealed that is not always happening. Our investigative team talked to more than 100 malpractice attorneys in all 50 states, and they heard the exact same thing. After doctors harm their patients, medical boards often look the other way. Yikes. This morning, Jim Axelrod shows us why the public often has little idea who these doctors really are.
She was paralyzed and had what they call drop foot, which is basically where your left foot just hangs down. It does nothing.
When Jeremy Payne's mother, Regina Bruce, had spinal surgery in 2008, her left leg was left paralyzed. She settled a medical malpractice suit with the surgeon, Dr. Steven Svabeck, who has a long history of problems in Indiana.
It's pretty bad that people can get away with what they have in these situations.
People?
Doctors.
Doctors are licensed and disciplined by state medical boards, panels made up almost entirely of fellow physicians.
What folks have to realize is that the medical board is not a substantial barrier to them being injured by a physician.
Dr. John Hall spent 25 years practicing pediatric anesthesia and critical care. Later in his career, he went to work as the executive director of the Mississippi Medical Board.
Most medical boards are constituted of physicians who are political appointees, and that is an inherent conflict of interest.
The people who are policing the doctors have an interest in protecting the doctors.
Absolutely.
But after Dr. Hall pushed the Mississippi Medical Board to be more aggressive in disciplining doctors, he found himself out of a job.
I believed in the mission of the medical board, and I thought this is a place where I can do this and do some good.
You were pushing too hard.
Absolutely.
Do members of the general public understand everything they could understand about the doctors who are treating them?
Oh, absolutely not.
Robert Oshel spent 15 years at the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, where he worked with the National Practitioner Data Bank, a federal database used by hospitals to keep track of bad outcomes by doctors. Oshel says there's a problem. The National Data Bank doesn't share doctors' names with the public.
If doctors' names were listed in the data bank, would it save lives?
Sure, because there are physicians who have very bad records who are still practicing.
Oshel scoured the data bank and turned up an alarming fact. Less than 2% of doctors are responsible for more than half of all malpractice settlements.
It's a very small proportion of physicians that have caused the bulk of the problem. And even worse, only 1 in 7 have had any action taken against them by any state.
Meaning most of the bad doctors are still practicing.
Right.
You know, kind of like whenever you buy a car, it has a Carfax. You know, it's almost like a doctor should have a doctor fax.
Jeremy Payne's mother was operated on by Dr. Steven Svabeck. Google him, and you won't find anything about his list of malpractice settlements in Indiana or the 3 sanctions Dr. Svabeck received more recently from the Florida Medical Board.
Really, I don't have any comments to make about any of these questions, no.
The Indiana board was made aware of Dr. Svabeck's problems in Florida, so we traveled to Indianapolis for the hearing.
If you had a chance to speak to the board, what would you say?
How many more lives are you going to allow him to ruin?
When Dr. Svabeck's case came up, we were surprised to see that not only was Dr. Svabeck not present, he didn't even have an attorney there to represent him.
Sounds like Florida has dealt with it.
The board fined Dr. Svabeck $1,000 and moved on. We asked for an interview with board president Dr. John Strobel. They didn't make him available. So when the board took a break, we tried to get some answers.
I'm Jim Axelrod with CBS News.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions.
Unfortunately, I can't.
Why can't you?
We have a... Hey, Mike. Yeah.
But you're the chairman of the board, and I would like to ask you some questions about Dr. Svabeck's case.
Mike, can you direct him to the right person?
You're the right person, sir. You're in charge. Are you telling me the buck doesn't stop with you?
Nope, not as an individual.
Now, the mission of the Indiana Medical Licensing Board is to protect the public. Is the sanction just given to Dr. Svabeck consistent with that?
Dr. Strobel didn't respond to a single question we asked.
Boy, he had nowhere to go, including the escalator. Jim, I'm going to get nervous next time I see you approaching with a TV crew. But after all this reporting, what have you heard about why the medical board seems so reluctant to pull the doctors' licenses when they know they're not doing a good job?
Gail,
Right. So that's the question, Gail, that we kept asking throughout our reporting. Why, with a system in which 2% of the doctors account for 50% of the malpractice awards and settlements, why isn't there more vigilance on the part of everyone in this system, insurance companies, medical boards, doctors, to target the bad actors? And over, the experts told us the same thing. When you have doctors policing doctors, there's a certain amount of reluctance built into that system to suspend or revoke licenses, and the degree to which there are positions reserved for non-doctors on state medical boards is the degree to which you will have some independence and autonomy on that board.
Boy, Jim, I have to say, we were all talking about your piece here at the table. We were really looking forward to it, and it certainly delivered. Tony, you touched on it yesterday. As a patient, do we just have to rely on the doctors to tell us the truth?
Yeah,
is that how it goes?
Well, it's like what the man said in the piece. He said there should be a Carfax for doctors.
If hospitals can track it, then people should be able to track it. And if somebody in Congress is watching this is definitely something to take up in legislation. That information should be public.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Jim, I forgot to say thank you to you. So thank you, Jim Axelrod. But what do patients do if we're supposed to have a surgery? Just rely on the doctors to tell us the truth?
I think you're getting at something very important here. That National Practitioners Data Bank, let's open that up so that you can check it out.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jim Axelrod.